They say the best way to get to know a person is to share a roof with them. I say the best way to know a monster is to try and get your own money back from them. My name is Mark. In the fall of 2023, my two roommates, Leo, an architectural design major, and Sarah, a pre-law student, and I thought we had struck absolute gold. We found a 3-bedroom apartment in the historic district of Boston. It was an old Victorian-style house with dark wood floors, high ceilings, and that specific, heavy scent of old paper and dust that every college student mistakes for academic charm. The owner was a man named Arthur Garrison. He looked exactly like the kind of guy who owned half the block, but still wore suits from the late 90s that were slightly too big for him. He had sharp, watery eyes and a smile that never quite reached them. Data is a historical building, Garrison had told us, sliding the lease across the table during our first meeting. It has character. It needs respect. If you break something, you pay. If you keep it clean, we will not have any problems. I do not tolerate troublemakers. We were so desperate to find a place close to campus that we barely read the fine print. We signed. We handed over the first month's rent, the last month's rent, and a hefty security deposit. $3,500 in cold hard cash. For the first 9 months, we were the perfect tenants. We paid our rent exactly 3 days before the deadline. When the radiator in the living room started clanking like a dying steam engine in November, we did not complain. We just put on thicker sweaters. When the water in the shower took 10 minutes to turn lukewarm, Sarah just adjusted her morning routine. We lived in our own little world of textbooks, black coffee, and late-night study sessions. But houses like that have secrets. Leo was the first to notice. As an architecture student, he spent his nights drawing blueprints and studying structural integrity. Mark, he said to me one night, looking up from his drafting table, "Have you looked at the basement stairs lately? The riser height is completely uneven. And the ceiling downstairs, it feels way too low for a legal residential unit. By law.du, not worry about it," I replied, running on 3 hours of sleep. It is just an old house. Just focus on your finals. If only I had listened to him back then. June arrived, and our lease was finally up. We spent an entire weekend cleaning that apartment. I am talking about military-grade cleaning. Sarah scrubbed the inside of the oven until the metal reflected her face. Leo touched up a tiny nick on the hallway wall with matching paint. I vacuumed the carpets until the fibers stood perfectly straight. The place looked better than it did when we moved in on the day of the final walkthrough. Garrison arrived. He did not bring a clipboard. He brought an attitude. He walked through the rooms like a king inspecting a conquered, disappointing province. He dragged his finger along the top of a door frame, looked at the faint gray dust, and sighed deeply. "Unacceptable," he muttered. "Excuse me?" Sarah asked, her voice tightening. "We spent 40 hours cleaning this place." Garrison did not answer. He walked into the living room, knelt down, and pointed at a microscopic, shallow scratch on the hardwood floor, likely caused by the rubber wheel of a suitcase. "Look at this. Deep structural damage to the original timber." This requires a full sanding and refinishing of the entire floor. That is easily $3,000. Are you insane? Leo stepped forward. That is normal wear and tear. The floor is 80 years old. Garrison stood up, brushing off his trousers. He looked at us with a cold, smug satisfaction. Your deposit of $3,500 is forfeited. In fact, after I calculate the cost of the professional deep cleaning and the floor restoration, you will probably owe me another $500. I will mail you the invoice. We stood there, paralyzed by the sheer, unadulterated injustice of it. We will take you to small claims court, Sarah said, her pre-law instincts kicking in. Her voice was shaking, but dangerous. Garrison paused at the door. He turned around, let out a dry, mocking laugh, and looked at us like we were insects. Listen to me, you little college parasites, he hissed. I own 24 buildings in this city. I know every judge in the district. My lawyers cost more per hour than your entire monthly budget. You want to spend the next 2 years of your lives fighting me over $3,000? Go ahead, try it. See what happens to your credit scores. See you around, kids. The door slammed shut. For the first 24 hours, we were defeated. We sat in a cheap diner, staring into our cold coffees. $3,500 was everything to us. It was our food budget for the next semester. It was our independence. He is right, I sighed. The system protects people like him, Sarah suddenly slammed her hand on the table, making the spoons rattle. No, it does not. The system protects people who know how to use it. He thinks we are stupid because we are young. He thinks because he has money, he is invincible. Leo, what were you saying about the basement 3 months ago? Leo blinked, his eyes widening. The structural layout? The ceiling height? Exactly. Sarah smirked, a dark smile spreading across her face. Garrison wants to play dirty. Let us play by the book. The literal 1,000-page state building and sanitary code book. That night, our new apartment turned into a war room. We did not sleep. We did not study for our actual classes. We studied Arthur Garrison. Leo pulled up the city public property database. We discovered that the Victorian house we had lived in was legally registered as a single-family home with an approved accessory dwelling unit. But Garrison had divided it into 3 separate apartments, including a converted basement where another group of international students lived. Sarah spent hours pulling up the Massachusetts State Sanitary Code and the Boston zoning ordinances. Look at this. Sarah pointed at the screen, her eyes bloodshot but intense. According to Section 400, any room used for sleeping must have a minimum ceiling height of 7 feet 3 inches. Leo, what did you estimate the basement ceiling to be? 6 feet 6 inches, maximum, Leo whispered, his eyes gleaming with realization. And there is more. I remember looking at the back of the house. The basement unit only has 1 door leading out to a narrow trench staircase. There is no secondary egress, no emergency fire exit, which means I intervened. The puzzle pieces finally locking together. That basement apartment is not just illegal, it is a death trap. We did not just look at our old apartment. We looked at the whole building. We found out that Garrison had never pulled a single building permit for structural alterations in that house for the last 15 years. Every wall he added to split the rooms. Every bathroom he installed to maximize his rent income. It was all done in the dark, without city inspections, without safety approvals. We are not going to small claims court, Sarah said, closing her laptop with a satisfying click. We are going to call the gods of bureaucracy. On a bright Tuesday morning, 2 weeks after our eviction, a plain gray Ford sedan pulled up to our old address. Out stepped a man named Inspector Vance from the Boston Inspectional Services Department. He wore a high-visibility vest, carried a digital measuring laser, and had a clipboard that looked like a weapon of mass destruction. We had filed a formal, comprehensive 45-page complaint, backed by photographic evidence, architectural sketches drawn by Leo, and citations of over 30 specific code violations. Because we had lived there, we had the legal right to report conditions that existed during our tenancy, and because the basement unit was currently occupied, the city was legally obligated to perform an immediate emergency safety check. Garrison was notified only an hour before. When he arrived in his Mercedes, his face was the color of spoiled milk. He saw us standing across the street, sitting on a bench, casually drinking iced LTTES. What is the meaning of this? Garrison shouted, storming up to Inspector Vance. This is harassment. These disgruntled kids are just mad because they ruined my floors. Inspector Vance did not even look up from his clipboard. Mr. Garrison, I am here regarding a Level 1 life safety complaint. We have reports of unpermitted structural modifications and an illegal, non-compliant residential unit in the basement. Open the doors, please. I do not have the keys for the basement today, Garrison lied, his voice cracking slightly. Mr. Garrison, Vance said, his voice dropping to a freezing temperature. If you refuse entry for a life safety inspection, I will call the Boston Police Department to assist me, and I will issue an immediate administrative freeze on all your active properties in this zip code. Open the door. Garrison slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out his keys. His hands were visibly shaking. Leo, Sarah, and I watched from across the street, like we were watching a Hollywood premiere. Vance walked inside. He spent 3 hours in that house. 3 hours of absolute silence. Every now and then, we could see the red dot of his laser measure bouncing through the windows. We saw him taking photos of the electrical panel in the hallway, the one that looked like a bird nest of exposed wires when Vance finally emerged. His expression was not just professional anymore. He was furious. The hammer of justice did not just hit Arthur Garrison. It crushed him. The official city report was released 3 days later, and Sarah managed to get a copy through a public records request. The findings were devastating. First, illegal unit conversion. The basement apartment was completely unapproved. The ceiling was nearly a foot below legal height, making it uninhabitable. Second, extreme fire hazard. The lack of a secondary emergency exit in a multi-unit dwelling was a criminal-level safety violation. The exposed, unpermitted 1970s wiring throughout the house was classified as an imminent threat to life. Third, structural sabotage. Garrison had cut through load-bearing beams in the cellar to install illegal plumbing for the extra bathrooms. The city did not just fine him. They issued a condemned, unfit for human habitation order. The building was red-tagged immediately. The international students living in the basement and the tenants on the second floor had to be evacuated within 48 hours. And under Massachusetts law, if a landlord is forced to evacuate tenants due to illegal conditions, the landlord is legally required to pay for their emergency relocation, including hotel stays and moving costs. But the financial bleeding did not stop there. Because the house was classified as an illegal rental, every single lease Garrison had signed for that property over the last 7 years was technically invalid. The city fined him $1,000 per day per violation, retroactive to the moment the illegal modifications were estimated to have occurred. The total initial fine from the city came out to $284,000. Additionally, the tax authorities were automatically notified about the undeclared rental income from the illegal units. A week later, Sarah sent a formal email to Garrison. It contained just one sentence: "We would like our $3,500 security deposit back now, along with the statutory triple damages for bad faith withholding under Massachusetts general laws." Under that law, if a landlord wrongfully keeps a deposit, the court forces them to pay 3 times the amount, plus attorney fees. Garrison did not call his expensive lawyers. He did not laugh. Within 2 hours, an electronic wire transfer hit my bank account. Amount received: $10,500. We walked past the house one last time before moving out of the city. The beautiful Victorian building was covered in bright yellow police-style tape. There were notices pasted on the door with giant red letters. "Do not enter." Garrison was standing on the sidewalk, arguing with a contractor who was giving him an estimate for the structural restoration. He looked 10 years older. His expansive suit was wrinkled, his hair was messy, and his arrogant smile was completely gone. As we walked past, he caught my eye. For a second, I thought he was going to scream or threaten us. Instead, he just looked away, staring at the ground, utterly defeated. He wanted to save $3,500 by robbing 3 college kids. In the end, his greed cost him his building, his reputation, and over $350,000 in fines. Let this be a lesson to every landlord who thinks students are easy prey. We do not just study for exams. Sometimes we study how to destroy you.